So the news is out. Rekkles has left Fnatic and signed with G2 Esports, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. When the Fnatic post first came out saying that Rekkles is officially leaving the team, my instant reaction and what I wrote on Twitter was, Europe lost the offseason. I honestly can't really stomach the idea of watching Rekkles play anywhere other than Fnatic. Now, obviously, that was a very emotional response. I try to pride myself on taking a rational approach to things, taking a balanced approach, and trying to understand all sides of an issue. So I want to take a few minutes to talk through why I think Rekkles made the choice he did and go a little beyond the surface on that, because I think most people would have a pretty quick read on why Rekkles would make this choice. I think there's a pretty clear parallel for a lot of League of Legends fans are also basketball fans, and you look at Kevin Durant leaving the Thunder to join the Golden State Warriors because that's the team that kept beating him and he wants to win a championship. You know, I think there's a pretty clear parallel there, but I think there are some layers to this decision that make it more interesting and make it worth talking about a little bit more. So I want to kind of ask the question, why is Rekkles joining G2? Why is he joining them now? And kind of how do I feel about it? So let's just be very clear up front. Rekkles didn't make this choice for money. It's not because G2 is going to pay him more than Fnatic did. I don't think Rekkles is motivated by the money he could make, and it also wouldn't make any sense that way. Fnatic are in the best position to give him more than just the money. For one thing, their rules about, at least they're on the LCS side rules, and I'm not sure if it's exactly parallel on the LEC, but, options to get ownership shares in the company, things like that are worth a lot and, could grow a lot in value in the future. And from what Fnatic have said publicly, they're prepared to offer a very large contract, very large salary. So I'm not convinced at all that Rekkles would, A, care about how much more money he could make, or B, could actually make more money from G2 than he could from Fnatic. I think we can, move that off the table. That's not one of the options for why Rekkles made this choice. It's really pretty simple. Rekkles wants to win Worlds. That's what motivates him. That's what he cares about. I don't think he even cares that much about winning LEC titles at this point, although, if your team is good enough to win Worlds, you have to assume they're going to win LEC along the way. But I don't think that's what matters to him. He's won LEC before. He's been to World Finals. The only thing left to achieve in his career competitively is to win Worlds. So that's the framework that would lead him to make the choice he's made. So the question then becomes, why would Rekkles decide he's going to try to win Worlds with G2 instead of with Fnatic, the org who has kind of always been alongside G2 as the top two kind of big dogs in Europe, and that he's been with throughout almost the entirety of his career? Especially when I think you can make an argument, and I made this argument at Worlds, that the current Fnatic, or the 2020 Fnatic team, actually looked better and performed better at Worlds than G2 did, despite G2 getting to the semifinals and Fnatic losing in quarters. Fnatic lost to Top Esports 3-2 in those quarterfinals, played them super close, were really close to beating a really strong team and making it to the semifinals. And if that had happened, I think a lot more could have happened beyond that, where G2 kind of walked over a pretty weak quarterfinalist in Gen G and then fell to the eventual tournament favorites 3-1 in the semis. I think there is an argument to be made, and I felt this way at the time, that Fnatic was more impressive in their quarterfinals loss than G2 were in their quarterfinals win. So, on that level, I think there are some arguments that Rekkles might feel like, hey, let's continue working on this Fnatic team, and maybe we can be better than that G2 team. I think primarily where you're going to see that is in the jungle position. I think Selfmade is a much stronger player than Jankos. I think Jankos really had kind of a bit of a fall-off year. And that's the main point that would motivate Rekkles to potentially consider staying with Fnatic. Whereas if you go to G2, obviously it's going to be about caps, right? Caps is the big difference there. I think at mid and support, I think most people would argue that G2 is a little bit of an upgrade over Fnatic, what they have in those positions, but I don't think it's a really big swing between the two orgs. And so it's really about Fnatic, I think, having the stronger jungle position, G2 having the stronger mid, and you can't really argue with the mid position at all. I think Caps is the strongest player in Europe right now, even without Perks leaving. And Rekkles is very familiar with Caps. The last time when Rekkles did go to World Finals, he did it playing with Caps before Caps left to go to G2. So the question is, even if mid is the problem, quote unquote, between the thing that is convincing Rekkles to go to G2 instead of Fnatic, why not stay on Fnatic and try to get the Fnatic mid lane upgraded? Even at, maybe you even say, why don't they try to get Caps to come over instead of Rekkles going that way? And there's some pretty clear reasons for that. One thing, Rekkles is a free agent right now and Caps is not. Caps is still under contract until the end of 2022. And so, maybe, Fnatic would have to lay out a whole ton of money to get Caps to come the other way. And then you look at other players they might be able to get in the mid lane to upgrade Fnatic. I think, Nisqy as a replacement for Nemesis, some people feel it's a downgrade, others feel it's a side grade. I think it's a skill side grade, but a stylistic upgrade personally. I think that Rekkles staying on this team would have made Fnatic a slightly better team in 2021 than they were in 2020. In 2020. But, I think there's room for debate about that. I think what you would look at potentially is why, Rekkles could have considered staying with Fnatic one more year until Selfmade becomes a free agent, and then maybe the two of them move over together to G2 if it didn't work out. But I don't think realistically that was an option. Because I find it unlikely that Fnatic would give Rekkles, that would offer him a 1-year deal, knowing now they're putting themselves in a position where they could lose both Rekkles and Selfmade in the same offseason and be in that much worse. Like, they're already in a kind of a tough, bad feeling position now where they have to replace Rekkles. If they had to replace both Rekkles and Selfmade in the same offseason, probably their two best players, they don't want to set themselves up for that, right? I think Fnatic wanted to lock Rekkles in long term for at least 2 or 3 years. And if that wasn't going to happen, they're probably going to say, no, now's the time. So I think that also gave a little bit of a push out the door to Rekkles from that perspective. So, putting that all together, I think you can see how Rekkles came to the decision that G2 was a more likely place for him to win Worlds, and that, if he really wanted to reunite with Caps, that was going to happen at G2 because of the way the cadence of free agency played out from year to year. And so it kind of had to be now. It wasn't going to be next year. It had to be this year, and so that probably is what led him to make the change. Now, where it gets really interesting is we have to figure out, is Rekkles right in this decision? Obviously, from his perspective, G2 is his best shot, and this was the right choice you could have made. But I think it depends, your assessment of whether Rekkles on Fnatic with Nisqy is stronger or whether G2 with Rekkles is stronger. I think that depends on a few things. One is what you think of Nisqy, and I think there are different opinions on him, and a lot of opinions. I've come up very strongly that I support Nisqy a lot more. I think much more highly of Nisqy, and I think many other people do. So I have a trend in that direction, but I don't think that's the main decider. I think just to say this again, I think Nisqy is a stylistic upgrade for Fnatic, and his pairing with Selfmade is going to be potentially very, very exciting, as long as again the game meta allows that to play out. But I think the analysis of the two different potential teams that Rekkles could have been part of also depends on what you think of Jankos. And I have maybe a bit of a lower opinion of the value Jankos is bringing compared to many other people. I think he did have very much a down year. I think the style he plays, again, the meta might shift and maybe the style he plays will become more relevant again, but I think there's more to it than that. I think the fundamental way he plays out the game is a little bit inferior to the way Selfmade understands the game and reads the game and plays things out. But I think, beyond those two things, it also depends what you think of Rekkles versus Perkz, and whether G2 with Rekkles is, the same level of team overall, or a bit of a worse team, or a bit of a better team than G2 with Perkz. I think if you just isolate them, Rekkles is a better bot laner than Perkz. I think he's got more, inherent ability to play those champions. I think his core kind of mechanical skill set is stronger in that role than Perkz is. But I would lean towards saying Perkz is the better overall player in the things he brings outside of his straight-up bot lane champion pool mechanics. I think he's got a lot of intangibles and a certain style of leadership and a mentality for the game that kind of breaks out of the typical patterns and can do things that win you games that you're kind of not supposed to win on paper, things like that. I think that G2... There's a chance and a bit of a risk that they're actually downgrading their roster by bringing in Rekkles instead of Perkz, even though on a more surface level view, it might seem like they're actually upgrading. We'll have to see how that actually plays out, but I have some concerns there. I think losing Perkz is a really, really big hole for this team, and it might hurt them in ways that on the surface we may not really expect. So clearly Rekkles weighed that out, and obviously he's going to have a lot of confidence in himself and say, I am going to upgrade that roster, and good for him, and he should have that mentality. But from an outside kind of third-party perspective on it, I'm not so sure. I think that Rekkles on Fnatic with certain style of players around him might be able to do a little bit more. But I think as I've weighed through those options, I have started to understand more of how Rekkles came to that call. What he thinks he can achieve on this G2 roster. And I think to kind of wrap that all up and see where I land on this, again, like my initial kind of emotional or gut feeling on this was I don't like the call. For one thing, I would rather see Europe with both Fnatic and G2, having their iconic star players and continuing to kind of stay on that track. I like players building up a legacy within an organization and kind of being part of that. But from an analytical perspective, you can see very clearly how Rekkles came to the choice he did. I think he definitely feels strongly that this is the team that's going to give him the best possible shot to win Worlds, and I don't think I can objectively say that he's wrong. I think I'm less convinced of that than obviously he is. But, so I think that Fnatic with Rekkles or with another really strong bot lane player is still going to be able to contest this G2 roster, especially because of the jungle position. But that's going to be, an interesting story to watch play out. I think we definitely should not say that LEC is now a one-team league or that G2, just hand them the titles and off they go and wait until what happens at Worlds. I think there's going to be a lot more nuance to the way the year plays out, and I'm looking forward to that. And as a final thought on this, I think, Rekkles is taking a risk with this move. He's saying, I'm going to leave the comfort. I'm going to leave behind the greater compensation he probably could have had at Fnatic. I think Fnatic probably would have given him a little more than G2 is giving him, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I think he is taking a bit of a risk, and in my opinion, it's more likely for that risk to pay off in 2022 than it is in 2021. Because I think there's a pretty good likelihood that a year from now, Selfmade is going to follow him in, unless Jankos has this huge redemption year and Selfmade, really struggles and doesn't look good. I think the roster G2 can field 1 year from now will be stronger than the roster they're going to field starting in January. And that's probably the year where things come to a head. A lot can happen in the next 12 months, so that might look completely different by then, but just standing from today's vantage point, that's how I'm feeling about it. And so I think Rekkles is committing to a 2 or 3 year project to try to win Worlds with this team. And again, the way free agency lined out, he wasn't going to be able to say, I'm going to stick with Fnatic this year, and we're going to make this super team, the Rekkles Caps pairing and whatever else around them. We're going to make that in 2022, because that wasn't going to happen the way the contracts are set up. So that's just kind of a walk through the process. I think Rekkles followed to land where he landed. Initially, I didn't see it as much, and I felt actually a little opposed to the idea, and I thought I saw a path where Rekkles and Fnatic could have worked out better. But as I kind of walked through this, thought, no, at this option, you would have to evaluate this and make this choice and lead to this point. I definitely see how he got where he wanted, where he made this choice the way he did. And I think now we have to for his sake, hope that it works out and that G2 can accomplish that. And if you're a Fnatic fan, I think don't lose hope. It hurts to see Rekkles leave, but I think this can still be a viable team, and I think there are other teams in Europe like Rogue that are going to try to contest G2. And if you're an overall fan of Europe and want to see a team that doesn't have a foregone conclusion and that has multiple teams vying for the title, I think you can still have a lot of hope in that. I don't think that this current 5-man G2 is the strongest it will ever be. I think 1 year from now, we're going to see something even better. And by then, hopefully some more players in Europe have risen up and will continue to contest them and drive them and push them forward.